I caught my husband with my son's fiancée, before the wedding. I was going to confront him, but my son stopped me. He whispered, "Mom, I already knew. And it's worse than you think." Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and join our community of real stories, stories of love, loss, and the strength to begin again. Now, let's begin the journey. The crack in my life sounded like a plate shattering against tile, sharp, stupidly loud, impossible to pretend it didn't happen. I was halfway through glazing a lemon pound cake when the platter slipped in my soapy hands and split into 3 white teeth on the kitchen floor. Sugar-slick glaze ran like candle wax toward the toe of my house shoe, and I just stood there with the whisk dripping, listening to my own breath. The house smelled like butter and zest in Sunday mornings, and still, something in me had already broken. "Lord, not the good platter," I whispered, crouching. The porcelain was cold and slick in my palms. In the window above the sink, the late October sunlight made a hard square on the counter, and dust floated in it like slow snow. I set the cake on a cooling rack and picked up the pieces, one by one, and then I heard the distinct clack of a car door outside. Marcus. Or Harold. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and pushed the curtain aside. Our driveway is a narrow strip of cracked concrete, hedged in by 2 azaleas that try to die every summer and change their minds every spring. Parked near the street was Kenya's blue Toyota, the one with the crooked rear emblem and a bobblehead nurse on the dash nodding too fast to every bump. She and I had spent an hour last week arguing amiably about ribbon colors for the rehearsal dinner. She'd hugged me goodbye and said my cake tasted like sunshine you can chew. The driver's door was open. A sleeve hung over the back of the passenger seat, brown leather, scuffed and softened by years, my husband's jacket. The elbow patch shone a little from the oil of his skin. I stitched that patch on one summer during a heat wave because he refused to give up the coat and I liked the stubbornness of it. There it was, half in the shade and half in the sun, like a thing caught in a lie. I don't know how long I stood there with the curtain bunched in my fist. Long enough for the glaze to set in white rivers down the cake. Long enough for my heartbeat to move from my ears back into my chest where it belonged. Long enough to think of 100 reasons that weren't the one burning through my throat. The front door creaked. Kenya slipped in, ponytail frizzed from the humidity, scrubs top under a denim jacket, a grocery sack clutched in her hand. "Miss Rhonda. Sorry, I used your side door. I brought the paper cups from Costco." Lord, those lines were a mess. She lifted the sack like a peace offering. "Put them on the counter," I said, smoothing my voice. "You okay, baby?" "Fine, fine." She cut her eyes toward the cake, then away. "That smells like trouble." "Is that the famous cake?" "Famous only in this kitchen," I said. "Where you coming from?" "Target." "And the florist?" She didn't meet my eyes. The bobblehead nurse nodded approval. "We got those white roses with the lemon leaves you liked. The lady gave us a discount because her cousin got married in the same church." Small world, right? She laughed too bright, like a bell rung too hard. I nodded. My mouth tasted like copper. "You parked out by the street?" "Yeah," she said fast. "Lot of leaves. Didn't want to track them in." I let that sit between us. The clock over the stove ticked with the confidence of something that never had to explain itself. "It's a pretty day," I said finally, and turned back to the cake like I could rewind into another version of this afternoon. "We're almost there." She leaned on the counter, twisting one of the paper cups. "I can't believe the rehearsal is tomorrow," she breathed. "Feels like it crept up on me, you know?" She smiled in my direction, eyes shiny. "Marcus is lucky to have you. You've done the absolute most." The absolute most. I took the knife and cut away the ragged edges of the glaze, revealing the cake's golden crumb. Well, that's what mamas do, I said. We fuss over things. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She flipped it face down so quick it might have burned her. Sorry. Work, she said, without looking. Nurse group chat. I nodded and reached for a clean towel. The one draped over the oven handle, white cotton with blue stripes, smelled like Harold's cologne when I pressed it to my palms. Not faint. Fresh. The scent lifted off the fabric warm as a neck, cedar and citrus and that peppery top note I'd picked out for him in a Belk 20 Christmases ago. I knew that smell better than I knew my own. Kenya's eyes flicked to me then, curious, wary. You okay? My voice came out tighter than I meant. I folded the towel, careful, like it might crumble. You seen Harold? Earlier? She swallowed. No, ma'am. Not since, The door opened again, and Salvation or Doom came in wearing my husband's grin and a polo shirt the color of confidence. Ladies, Harold said, slick as new oil. He kissed the air near my cheek and rapped his knuckles on the counter to the beat of a song only he could hear. That cake is illegal in 49 states, Nita. You'll have folks confessing sins just to get a slice. My name is Rhonda, but he calls me Nita when he's feeling sweet. It used to melt me. Today it just made me tired. Hey, Kenya, he added, easy. Your car is blocking the mailbox. You mind pulling up a foot? Mail lady's got a temper. Of course, Kenya said, already moving. The door snicked shut behind her, and her perfume, something green and inexpensive, faded down the hallway. I set the folded towel on the counter, a quiet anchor, and turned the water on hard. The faucet roared like I'd asked it to drown something for me. Harold leaned in and nudged my shoulder with his. You all right, Nita? You look like you lost a friend. I broke the platter, I said. Oh, well, he said, shrugging. We'll get another. It's just a thing. Just a thing. 27 years into him, everything was still replaceable if the store was open and the card hadn't hit its limit. I shut off the water. The silence left a high-pitched whistle in my head. Where'd you go? I asked, keeping my eyes on the towel. You said you had errands. Hardware store. He slipped a hand into his pocket, pulled it out empty, and then changed pockets like the truth was in the other one. Needed picture hooks for the hallway photos. That one of Marcus at state championship keeps listing to the side. My thumb rubbed the towel stripe until the skin warmed. You take your jacket? Morning's been chilly. He stretched a smile. What, I can't feel my own weather? I'm asking if you took your jacket, I said, turning to face him. He blinked slow. No, he said, picking up a paper cup, setting it down, picking it up again. I mean, maybe. I don't know. Why? No reason. I slid the towel into the drawer and shut it like closing a book. Mail lady's got a temper, huh? You know she does, he chuckled. Little woman, big energy. He patted my hip. You worry too much. You're doing that forehead thing. Before I could answer, Kenya came back in, breath misting from outside. Moved it, she said, then forced a smile. I'm headed to the church to drop these cups. Should I bring back the tablecloths from the storage closet, Miss Rhonda? That'd be good, I said. White ones with the hemstitch. Check the top shelf. On it. She hesitated like she wanted to say something else, then pushed through the door and was gone, the bobblehead agreeing with her decision as the engine coughed alive. Harold drummed his fingers. You want me to slice this cake? Save you the trouble? No, I said. I want you to take out the trash. He laughed, that easy roll that always meant I was being cute. Yes, ma'am. He gathered the bag, knotted it, and hauled it toward the back door. As he passed, a draft lifted the curtain, and sunlight flashed on his wedding ring, a bright, quick lie. The back door thudded shut. Alone in the hum of the kitchen, I opened the drawer again and lifted the towel to my face. The cologne bloomed. I saw Kenya's open car. I saw the sleeve. I saw my own hand sewing the elbow patch while a summer storm rattled the gutters and the kids slept on the floor in a fort of couch cushions. I heard myself humming the same hymn over and over, a refrain against bad weather. Marcus texted, running late. Need anything? My thumb hovered. I typed, deleted. Typed again, bring ice. Deleted that too. The house settled on its bones. A truck down the street rolled over a pothole, and the sound came to me in two parts, the thump and the echo. The clock ticked, indifferent. On the counter, the cake shone like a still pond. Harold came back in, whistling off-key. He washed his hands, slung the excess water onto the sink like a boy, and leaned his hip against the counter right where the glaze had pooled and hardened into a sugared lip. We're gonna pull this off, he said to his reflection in the window. Big day tomorrow. We are, I said, hearing the flatness and not bothering to fix it. He kissed my temple. The touch made my skin crawl and ache at the same time. Love you, Nita, he said. I looked at the towel in my hands, at the careful stripes now crumpled. He collected his keys. I'm heading out again, he said. Forgot the, hooks. Be back in a bit. Take a jacket, I said, because the words were standing in line behind my teeth and needed to go somewhere. Nights cool fast. He paused a second too long, then reached for a denim one off the peg. Not the leather. You're the boss. When the door closed, I went to the front window and lifted the curtain like a woman with a habit. The blue Toyota was gone. Our mailbox stood empty-mouthed, waiting. In the driveway, a single lemon leaf had fallen and stuck to the concrete, bright as a fallen coin. My phone buzzed again. It wasn't Marcus this time. A new message lit the screen, the preview clicked to protect me, like a stranger putting a hand over a child's eyes. A first name. A heart. A time and a place. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I rinsed the knife under hot water until the blade fogged, set it down with care, and pressed my palms flat on the cool counter. The house held its breath with me. If he was going where I thought he was going, there'd be a next time. And this time, I would see it with my own eyes. The first lie was the text, the second was the way my hands stopped shaking the moment I slipped my keys into the ignition. I told myself I was only going for milk. Then I pulled past the Kroger without even slowing down. Night had fallen like a curtain someone yanked too hard. The air tasted like damp pennies. I drove with the radio low, a talk station whispering about traffic that didn't matter to me. Streetlights stitched the road into pieces. I followed the route my gut had written without asking my permission, left at the Baptist church with the neon cross, right at the tire place that smells like hot rubber and old coffee, straight past the closed car wash where water beads still clung to the blue foam brushes like tears. A storm was thinking about itself somewhere far off. The sky flickered, silent, like a blink. I turned onto Route 9 and saw it before I was ready, the cheap roadside motel with the red sign trying to be brave, letters humming, vacancy winking like an eye that knows too much. Room doors marched along the second floor like teeth. A Coke machine glowed in the corner, its face freckled with moths. I cut my headlights, left the engine running, then shut it off because the sound felt like a siren in my throat. My palms had gone slick. I wiped them on my skirt and leaned forward so the steering wheel pressed a groove into my ribs. The air conditioner clicked and died. Without it, the car filled with the sweet cold smell of lemon oil from the dash wipes I keep in the glove box. My mouth went dry. A silver sedan rolled in 2 spaces down. The driver didn't get out right away. I recognized the slump of the shoulders and the ritual, phone check, mirror glance, deep breath. Harold. He stepped into the spill of neon and became someone I didn't recognize wearing my husband's posture. He smoothed his shirt with both hands like he was ironing his conscience. He didn't look around because men who don't want to see don't turn their heads. I counted 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, the way I did when Marcus was little and hiding behind the couch. At 3, another car nosed in, blue paint catching a nervous shine under the sign. I could have named that car from a shadow, the crooked emblem, that bobblehead on the dash nodding yes 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 to everything. Kenya sat very still for a moment, hands at 10 and 2 like a student driver waiting for permission to move. Then she moved. She wore a hooded jacket, the kind you throw on when you don't want to be remembered. She didn't see me. She saw Harold, and I saw her seeing him. They didn't kiss. It would have been kinder if they had, a clean wound instead of this careful avoidance of the obvious. He reached for her elbow. She let him. They walked along the balcony, footsteps soft as guilt, to a door marked 12. He opened it with the key of a man who had practiced. The door closed and I was left with the sound of my own breath doing push-ups inside my chest. The car smelled wrong, stale coffee, panic. Somewhere behind the office, a TV laughed at a joke I didn't hear. I could feel the shape of my phone in my bag like a hot stone. I dragged it out with stiff fingers and stared at the last message again, a time, an address, a little red heart. Maybe that heart wasn't for me at all. Maybe I'd only been CC'd by fate. My thumbs moved before I decided. I typed one word, Marcus? He answered faster than any mother has a right to hope. Where are you, Ma? The last thing I wanted to do was put a sentence around where I was. I swallowed, looked at the sign, the moths, the cheap rusted railing, and texted, I need you at the diner next door. Now. 3 dots. Disappeared. Came back. On my way. I put the key in the ignition, then pulled it back out. My hands had learned a new tremor. I was afraid to look at the motel again, as if it might look back and tell me to mind my business. I eased the car into gear and crept the 15 yards to the diner, the kind that serves breakfast all night because some people don't know where else to go with their hunger. The windows were fogged from fryer heat and conversation. A neon coffee cup blinked open, a metronome for the sleepless. Inside, the bell on the door declared me in a voice I didn't approve. Everything smelled like hot grease and sugar. A teenage busboy with a pimple constellation wiped a table with the slow resignation of a person working off a mistake. The waitress, Mary Ellen stitched over her heart, had a beehive that should have gotten its own zip code. She took one look at me and poured coffee without asking, an act of mercy I didn't deserve but accepted. You okay, honey? She said, already moving away because the answer was no and she had a full section. I slid into a booth by the window and angled myself so I could see the motel in the reflection, the way you stare at the sun by looking at the water. The vinyl stuck to the back of my knees. The coffee steamed up into my face and smelled like the night shift at any hospital, burnt, necessary. I wrapped my hands around the mug so the heat had somewhere to go. Headlights swung across the lot like a searchlight. Marcus's truck, white with a dent by the tailgate from a moving day 3 years ago, pulled in hard. He cut the engine and sat there a beat, forehead against the steering wheel, then collected himself and came in. The bell shouted his entrance too. He spotted me and crossed the room fast, the line of his jaw set in a way that wasn't his father's. He slid into the booth and reached for my hands, not the coffee. His palms were warm, calloused. You shouldn't be here, he said, quiet, like the walls could be witnesses. You knew, I said. The words shocked me with how steady they sounded. I owed my mouth a thank you later. He flinched and nodded once. Not an admission, just a surrender. I didn't want you to see. Then why didn't you stop it? I hated how fast it came out, the sharp to it. The way mothers bleed into interrogators when the world threatens their children. He didn't look away. His eyes were tired in the corners. Because I couldn't stop it without breaking something you love. I let go of his hands and reached for a sugar packet, turned it over and over until the paper went soft. What do you think you're protecting me from? It's already broke. Mary Ellen appeared with the reflexes of a guardian angel and a single nod. You want another mug, baby? She asked Marcus, like she'd known him since he was 4 and sticky. He managed a smile that belonged to a boy I recognized. Please, ma'am, he said. He has my manners when he's worried. He watched her pour, thanked her, stirred without tasting, then said, Mama, listen. Please. I listened to the sound of ice settling in glasses 2 booths over. Someone dropped silverware. The world kept on with the most insulting normalcy. I found out a couple weeks ago, he said. Kenya told me. I thought we could fix it quietly. Save everything. He blew out a breath that fluttered the napkin. I told him to end it. Swore to me he did. My laugh came out small and mean. Swore to you. I shouldn't have believed him. That's on me. He rubbed his thumb over the ridge of a crack in the table, like he could smooth it. But, Mama, it's complicated. It's worse than you think. I closed my eyes. The motel sign winked in the window, reflected over his shoulder like a devil making faces. My heart went tight. Worse how? It cost me to ask. It cost more not to. He swallowed. The muscles in his neck worked like he was pushing stones down. Kenya's pregnant. The words didn't land so much as rearrange the furniture in my chest without asking permission. I put my hand flat on the table because gravity didn't seem trustworthy. The coffee tasted like wallpaper paste in memory. I set it down carefully so I wouldn't throw it. Is it yours? I asked, not recognizing my own voice, the evenness, the accountant's ledger of it. He looked at me like a man tied to a chair. We don't know. The diner's hum turned thin. The TV over the counter, tuned to a game with the sound off, showed men running for their lives in a stadium while no one screamed. Mary Ellen refilled someone's Coke and laughed at nothing. I found a napkin without a grease stain and folded it into a square, then a smaller square, then a tight shy rectangle that had to become something else to survive. How long? I said. A couple months, he said. She tried to tell me, then tried not to, then did. I thought I was angry at her, but I was just stupid. Or hopeful. He shrugged and the movement had a shiver in it. I told him if he loved you, he'd tell you. He said he wouldn't, said he didn't want to hurt you before the big day. Like postponing pain counts as kindness. I stared at his hands. He has Harold's hands, broad, veined, competent. I wanted to hate them for a second and then I hated myself for wanting that. I reached out and covered them again. You're my boy, I said. The words felt like a raft I could climb onto. Whatever happens, you're my boy. His face did something complicated and restrained. I know. He squeezed my fingers. Mama, please. Don't go over there. Not tonight. Don't make them the audience to your pain. I don't want them to be anything, I said, and then the truth slipped out without lipstick on. I wanted to be wrong. He exhaled through his nose, slow. Me too. The bell rang, a couple came in arguing in whispers, sat, didn't order. The clock over the register said 9:47 in red digits that refused to be poetic. My insides buzzed like a wire stripped of its rubber. What do we do? I asked, which is its own humiliation, a mother asking her child for the adult thing. We get the truth, he said. Start there. Then we decide if we bleed together or apart. I nodded like he'd handed me a map, even if the legend was missing. In the window behind him, room 12's curtain shifted a fraction, then settled. Maybe it was the air conditioning. Maybe it was a hand letting go of the edge. Come home with me, he said. Please. I should have. I wanted to. But under the table, my foot had already pointed toward the door and the parking lot and the red sign that blinked like a dare. In a minute, I said. Go on ahead. I'll be right behind you. He studied me hard, my tells, my lies, the little twitches that raised him. He nodded finally, but it was the kind of nod that says, I don't believe you and I love you anyway. He stood, pressed a kiss to my forehead, so light it felt like permission, and left. The bell tattled again. I sat alone with the coffee in my hands and the part of me that wasn't ready to go home. The motel sign blinked out, then in, then out, spelling something I didn't want to read. My phone buzzed on the table, face up this time. A new message. A location pin. A single line. Room 12. Doors open. I didn't knock. I pushed, and the door gave like a mouth that had something bitter to say. The chain caught, a cheap brass vein stretched tight, and the gap let out a ribbon of air that smelled like bleach and someone's cologne that didn't belong to this room. The TV threw blue light over the carpet, and the air conditioner rattled like a loose tooth. Hello? My voice came out shorter than I felt. The chain slid free. The door opened wider. Kenya stood 3 feet back, hoodie zipped to her throat, eyes raw like she'd been rubbing them with salt. Her hair was tucked under a cap the color of wanting to disappear. Up close, she looked both younger and older, like bad news had altered the math of her face. Miss Rhonda, she said, not quite whispering, not quite brave. I sent it. I'm sorry. My fingers tightened around my phone until the case creaked. Where is he? Getting ice. She nodded toward the bucket on the dresser, the kind wrapped in a plastic bag that sounds like guilt when you touch it. She stepped aside. Please come in for a minute. I don't want to do this in the parking lot. I crossed the threshold because I didn't trust my knees to hold me if I stayed in the doorway. The carpet had the texture of a damp sponge. The bedspread had a loud floral pattern meant to distract from its history. I could smell lemon cleaner fighting with something older and less proud. Make it quick, I said, though I didn't know what it was, confession, excuse, a timetable for the end of the world. She shut the door and pressed her back to it like she was the chain now. I told Marcus weeks ago, she blurted. He said he'd handle it. He asked me to stop seeing, she swallowed the rest and started again. I tried. I did. But Harold kept showing up. Saying we needed to talk things through so nobody got hurt. I laughed once, short and wrong. How'd that plan work out? Tears made her eyeliner smudge into a kind of surrender. She moved to the little square table under the window, picked up a white pharmacy bottle, and set it between us like an offering. Prenatal vitamins, she said. Her voice had scraped itself thin. 10 weeks on Wednesday. The number hit like a ruler across my knuckles. My eyes went to her hands without permission. Her nails were bitten, one cuticle raw. On the table beside the bottle sat a folded appointment card with Dr. S handwriting I couldn't read and a date circled in pink, Tuesday, 9:15 a.m. How long? I said, the words heavy as coins. Since late summer, she said. One night that was a mistake turned into more because she stopped, pulled her jacket tighter like the room had teeth. Because I was stupid. Because he said he'd talk to you. Because I didn't want to blow up Marcus's life with a rumor when I didn't even know. She pressed her fingers to her eyelids. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't have a big explanation. Just a little one that feels ugly to hold. The TV flashed a car commercial that made the bedspread flicker. Outside, an engine shifted gears, then faded. Somewhere a faucet dripped like a slow clock. You texted me, I said. Why? Because you deserve to hear it straight. Not from him. Not from anyone else. She lifted her chin and met my eyes for the first time. There was a steadiness there I hadn't seen before. Because I'm not brave, but I'm trying to be honest. I took the chair opposite her, the vinyl seat sighing under my weight. My hands wanted something to do. I picked up the appointment card and turned it over. On the back, a nurse had scribbled tips, small meals, ginger candies for nausea, stay hydrated. Real-world kindness in blue ink. You told my son, I said. I did, she said, a thread of pride under the shame. He didn't yell. He didn't call me names. He said we'd get a test when we could and tell you both the truth. He said he loved me and hated me at the same time. Her mouth trembled. He's a good man. He is, I said, and the sentence hurt as much as anything else tonight. The air conditioner clicked off and the room fell into a different silence, softer, worse. Does Harold know you told him? I asked. She nodded, a small uncertain bob. He said he'd handle the logistics. He said he would keep you from pain before the big day. Like pain could be scheduled. She laughed, and it broke in the middle. He said a lot of things. Footsteps crunched on the gravel outside. We both turned our heads. The metal handrail gave a tired whine under someone's weight. Kenya flinched and reached for the ice bucket, then changed her mind and grabbed my wrist instead, quick, desperate, a child's grip on a sleeve in a crowd. Don't let him see you here, she whispered. Please. I should have wanted the opposite. I should have wanted the collision, the blowout, the sirens. But something in the quiet of her plea cut through my fury. I let her pull me toward the bathroom, its door half closed, its light a harsh box. I stepped inside and the smell hit me, industrial lemon and mildew, a shower curtain with pink flamingos that had seen too much. The mirror over the sink threw my face back at me, older than this afternoon, jaw tight, eyes bright in a way that felt like fever. Kenya stayed outside, between me and the door, and in the next second a key slid into the lock and the handle turned. The room filled with Harold's voice before it filled with his body. Got ice, he said lightly. And I snagged 2 Snickers from the machine. Don't say I don't treat you. The paper bucket crackled. The door clicked shut. I could hear the clink of cubes against plastic, the soft thud of a candy bar tossed on the table. I pressed my palm over my mouth until my own breath warmed my fingers. Hey, he said, softer now. Look at me. A beat. The little room hummed. I could picture his hand reaching, 2 fingers under her chin, the move he used when he wanted to stage manage someone's eyes. We're all right, he said. Tomorrow's a big day. No drama. You hear me? I told Marcus I'd handle it. He bought it. Kenya's voice came ragged and small. She knows. A sliding of sound, like someone lowering a glass too hard. What did you say? I told her, Kenya said. I sent the message. She walked in. She's here. The silence that followed shook, thin ice over black water. The bathroom walls felt closer, closer, as if they were leaning in to hear. Where, he said finally, each letter weight-trained. Kenya's answer wasn't words. It was the sound of someone not moving. Lord, girl, he muttered. You don't know what you've done. I know exactly, she said, and the backbone in her voice surprised me so much I forgot to breathe. I'm done lying for you. He laughed, too quick, and it bounced off the furniture in bright, ugly pieces. You think telling her fixes anything? You think it makes you noble? You wanted this. No, she said. I wanted to be loved. That's not the same. My hand shook before I knew it was moving. I slid my phone out and thumbed the voice recorder like I was praying with technology. The little red lines started crawling across the screen, steady as a second hand. My pulse thumped in my wrist against the cool porcelain of the sink. Listen, he said, lowering his voice to that tone he uses when he wants to sell you something you already own. After the rehearsal, I'll talk to Rhonda. We'll say you got confused. You can cry. They'll forgive you. People forgive pretty girls who cry. I'm not doing that, she said. And if you call me a girl again, I'm going to scream. You gonna tell her it could be my kid? He snapped, the smile gone like a light switched off. Marcus already knows the timeline, she said. We'll test when we can. He swore under his breath, a name he only used for strangers and God. The bed creaked. I pictured him sitting down, elbows on knees, the posture he takes right before he lies like a professional. You are throwing your life away for a woman who will never forgive you. A beat. Then Kenya, I don't need her forgiveness to tell the truth. I need my own. I had to close my eyes. Pride and fury and grief ran through me at the same speed, a flood trying to choose a direction. I thought of Marcus with his forehead on the steering wheel. I thought of Harold's wedding ring flashing in my kitchen like an accidental signal. I thought of 10 weeks circled in pink ink. The AC kicked back on with a cough. The bathroom light buzzed. On my screen, the red line kept walking forward. You hear me, Kenya? Harold said again, softer now, bargaining. We do this quiet. We keep the ceremony clean. I'll take care of everything afterward. Money. Whatever you need. Stop, she said, and the single syllable had the weight of a slammed door. You don't get to make this sound generous. He stood. I could tell from the shift in his voice's height. Where is she? He asked again. Rhonda. Where? My thumb hovered over stop. I thought about opening the door and letting his face crash into the truth that had been waiting its turn, but something in me wanted him to stew in not knowing a little longer. To feel the shape of fear in his own chest. I slid the phone into my pocket and eased the bathroom door open 2 inches. Kenya's gaze snapped to me, quick and wild, and then she did something I didn't expect. She nodded. Not a plea, not a warning. A passing of a baton. I stepped out. The room shrank around Harold's surprise. For a heartbeat we were all just eyes and air. Harold, I said. He started to smile like a reflex, then saw the way I was looking at him and let it die. He glanced at the table, at the bottle, at the appointment card with its pink circle, at the ice that was already melting into a mess he'd made. Rhonda, he said finally, carefully, like the word might cut his tongue. This. Don't, I said. He swallowed. The TV washed a car down a mountain road in slow motion. The ice bucket sighed. Kenya stood with her hands at her sides like a soldier at attention. I slipped my hand in my pocket and felt the warm rectangle of my phone, the tiny recording of the unfixable. My heart beat so hard it made a sound in my ears. "We are not doing this here," I said. "We will do it at my table." He opened his mouth. I turned to Kenya, not him. "You will be there," I said. "Tomorrow. 7. She nodded, relief and terror writing the same breath. The doorframe hummed when a truck rumbled past. Somewhere, someone laughed in the room next door and then remembered not to. I moved toward the door. Harold stepped half a step to block me without realizing, then thought better and shifted aside. My hand was on the knob when my phone vibrated, a message from Marcus, 2 words that hit like a gavel. "Don't wait." The fork hit the plate like a gavel, and nobody moved. The house smelled like rosemary and heat, chicken skin crackled in its own oil, and the biscuits steamed butter into the air the way a choir hums before the song begins. I had set the table like a battlefield disguised as Sunday, cloth napkins folded into fans, the good glasses catching the light, candles stuttering as if they knew what was coming. "Grace?" I said, though I didn't bow my head. My voice had that glassy calm that makes people lean in. Harold cleared his throat, reached for Marcus's hand, thought better, reached for mine, thought better again, and scraped his chair closer to the table. "I can say it," he offered, big-hearted, false. "Lord, we thank." "No," I said, and my son's gaze snapped to me like a compass needle finding north. Kenya sat very straight, hands folded in her lap, wearing a navy dress I'd helped her pick out, the one with the tiny lemon-colored buttons she said made her feel put together. Her mouth trembled once, then held. A strand of hair had slipped from her clip and lay against her jaw like a question mark. "She didn't touch it." "Eat while it's hot," I said, because I needed them to do something ordinary with their hands. Silverware slid across porcelain. Marcus cut into a thigh, took a bite, chewed like he was being observed by strangers. Harold poured water and missed the glass by a hair, a thin line running off the rim and into his cuff. Kenya took a biscuit, tore it open, watched the steam curl, then put it down untouched. The candle nearest her guttered and revived. I let 2 minutes pass so the first mouthfuls wouldn't be the last. Then I set my own fork down quietly and looked at each of them in turn. "Who wants to start?" I asked, "or should I?" Harold laughed, easy, a little too round. "Start what?" "You mean your famous toast?" "Baby, I think." "Don't," I said. He swallowed the rest and reached for salt he didn't need, shook it over chicken that didn't ask for it. The sound was a soft rain we all pretended to enjoy. Marcus stared at his plate like he could find a different answer under the gravy if he cut deep enough. "Mama," he said finally. "I'm listening," I said, though my attention had already divided itself into quadrants, the room, the table, their faces, the pulse in my throat. Kenya pressed the tip of a knife into a pat of butter until it gave, then blinked fast that she'd hurt something. "Miss Rhonda," she said. "Aye." Harold's chair scraped. "She doesn't have to." "She does," I said, not taking my eyes off her. "Go on." Kenya inhaled like the room had been holding its breath and she was returning it. "I made a mistake," she said, voice shaking but not collapsing. "A big one. I told Marcus." Harold leaned back, folded his arms, the man who always knew how to wait out a storm. "We all make mistakes," he said, tone pastor slick. "What matters is we forgive." "Don't you dare deploy forgiveness like a mop," I said. He smiled with only his mouth. "What are you even accusing?" Marcus's fist came down once, just enough for the flatware to jump. "Dad," he said, and the word was a warning. Don't. Silence rang. Outside, a dog barked, realized its error, and quieted. The ice maker in the freezer dropped a load with a clatter like little bones. Kenya looked at me. I'm late, she said simply. 10 weeks. All the air felt thick, like soup that never thins. I nodded once because my head needed to move. And the father? Her eyes filled and did not spill. We don't know yet. Harold exhaled as if that made him vindicated. Which is what I've been saying, he chimed in, too quick. Speculation ruins families, Rhonda. We must stop pretending your mouth is a safe place, I said. Something in his face flashed anger, or the panic that comes right before it. He set his fork down with care. I'm not. It happened, Marcus said to his plate, as if saying it more directly to the meat made it easier. We can all agree on that. Harold snapped toward him. Now hold on, son. Don't son me, Marcus said. When he looked up, he had my father's steel in him. You looked me in my face and lied. Repeatedly. Harold's jaw worked, he glanced at me to see if I was a jury he could sway. I gave him nothing. He turned to Kenya like she was a note card he could annotate. We have decided, he said carefully, to keep things dignified until the ceremony. Then. We have not decided anything, she said, so quietly the word carried more weight. And the ceremony, she broke off, pressing her fingertips hard into the linen as if to make it remember her shape. I can't stand up in a white dress with this much red inside it. I heard the sink drip in the other room. I heard the candle popping tiny fat sounds when the wick found a vein of sugar. I heard my own voice from far away ask, when do we know? Soon, she said. An appointment on Tuesday. Then we wait for results. How long? I asked. A few weeks, she whispered. The calendar unfurled in my head like a bad banner. Every square carried a weight. The cake, the flowers, the seating chart, the dress, the whole loved machinery of it, shuddered and went still. Harold reached for my hand as if we had been married 5 minutes ago. I moved mine to the stem of my water glass and watched his fingers close on air. He smiled as if he meant it. Rhonda, we can heal from this. People do. We put the child first. We. The child, I repeated, and the word felt holy and raw. The child will be loved. That part is not up for debate. Kenya's chin crumpled. Marcus looked at the ceiling the way men do when they are trying not to cry and failing. He wiped his nose with the back of his wrist and didn't apologize for it. You're blaming me, Harold said to me, and the injured tone almost fooled me except for the tiredness behind it. Like I broke this alone. No, I said. You broke your vows. She broke our trust. And the sentence stopped to find its legs. I broke something too, by not listening to what I already knew. He softened, sensing an opening. Baby, I was weak. It happened once. Maybe twice. It's not. Stop counting, I said. He blinked. The room felt 2 degrees colder. You don't know. I know enough, I said, and then I slipped my phone from the pocket of my apron and tapped its face. The screen lit with my reflection and a small bar of red marching left to right. I set it on the tablecloth between the salt and the gravy boat, pressed play, and folded my hands. His voice filled the room, too clear, too familiar. We do this quiet. We keep the ceremony clean. I'll take care of everything afterward. Money. Whatever you need. The room didn't breathe while it listened to him. Not even the walls. He reached, fingers stubbing for the phone, but Marcus was faster, palm flat over it. Harold pulled back like he'd touched a stove. Shame washed over him and left a chalky residue he didn't know how to wipe off. "What do you want?" he said to me, not a question so much as a negotiation-starting pistol. "Blood? My keys? My side of the bed? You want me to sleep in the truck? That what you want?" I pushed my chair back and stood because I needed to feel my legs under me. "I want to finish this meal without anyone lying," I said. "Starting now." Kenya made a small animal sound that wasn't pain and wasn't relief. "I'm sorry," she said again, to the table, to the ring of water her glass had left, to the version of herself that never walked into that room. "If it's Marcus's, I'll spend my life earning it back. If it's not, she stepped off the sentence and couldn't find it again. Marcus's chair scraped as he stood. He was shaking and trying not to, which is a special kind of heartbreak to watch in your child. He turned to Harold, and something in the way he straightened his shoulders told me the line had been drawn and he was choosing a side. "You don't come to the rehearsal," he said. "You don't show up tomorrow and pretend to be the man you taught me to be." Harold swallowed. "Son. That word is rented," Marcus said. "You can turn it in now." The candles had burned low enough to bend. The rosemary made the air feel greener than it was. I took the serving knife and cut the biscuits into quarters because my hands needed a task. "Eat," I said, and it came out almost gentle. "Eat something. Nobody thinks good on an empty plate." Kenya reached for a quarter biscuit like it was a sacrament. She put it in her mouth and chewed with her eyes closed. Marcus sat back down and pushed chicken around like anger could find a path if he drew it with gravy. Harold stayed standing, then lowered himself, older in the movement than he'd been this morning. We ate, badly, in sounds that didn't match the motions. When the plates were messy and the silence had grown too big for the room that held it, I gathered my phone, slid it into my pocket, and reached for the matches. I snuffed the candles one by one with the silver bell snuffer my mama gave me when I first learned how to make a table look like love. Smoke curled up, sweet and ghosty. Marcus's phone buzzed against the wood, rattling like a beetle caught in a jar. He glanced at it, then showed me the screen without a word. A message from an unknown number. A time. A clinic name. A confirmation code. "Tuesday," he said. The word knocked around the room and didn't settle anywhere safe. Kenya nodded, a single sharp motion. Harold stared at the far wall like it had just told him a joke he didn't get. I stacked the plates, my hand steady now that there was a clock attached to our disaster. In the window glass, I caught our reflections, blurred and true enough to cut. "Be here at 6:30, I told them, voice low. "We'll ride together in the morning." I carried the plates to the sink, and behind me I heard one chair, then another, scrape back. The room exhaled. What none of us said hung between the steam and the smoke. That night had a long memory, and Tuesday was closer than we were ready for. The needle slid in and Kenya's breath vanished. Not a gasp, not a cry, just the quiet shudder of someone holding still so the world doesn't fall apart. The phlebotomist hummed 4 bars of something gospel under her mask, tape ready between 2 fingers, the smell of alcohol wipes clean and mean in the air. Marcus stood behind Kenya's chair, his hands on the backrest like he was bracing a door against a storm. I sat where they told me, blue plastic chair, corner of the room, the place for witnesses and mothers who can't fix anything with a band-aid. "Almost done," the nurse said, voice soft as folded linen. Blood lifted into the vial, dark and certain. Kenya stared at the poster on the wall, smiling cartoon organs with captions that tried too hard. Her jaw flexed once, then eased. When the last vial filled, the nurse pulled the needle with the care you give a truth. Cotton, pressure, tape. A gloved hand on a shoulder. You did good, honey. I didn't, Kenya said, barely audible. The nurse made a quiet sound that meant we can be kind without agreeing. Just wait here a minute. I'll grab paperwork. She left a lemon slice sticker on the counter. You were brave today. Like a joke only the kind-hearted get away with. Marcus leaned low to Kenya's ear. You okay? No, she said. Then, after a beat, but I'm here. He nodded like those two things could be true at the same time, and maybe for once they were. He glanced at me. I lifted a hand, half blessing, half truce, and felt my throat close around everything I couldn't say. The walls were hospital white with scuffs where chairs had knocked into them again and again. Life leaves marks. So do we. At the front desk, forms changed hands. I paid the copay before anyone could argue. The receptionist thanked me in a voice that had practiced sympathy. Results are mailed and uploaded to the portal, she recited. About 2 weeks. 2 weeks is an ocean when you can't swim. We left with a packet that tried to be reassuring in pastel fonts. Outside, the January air sliced clean through my coat and woke my skin. The parking lot smelled like cold metal and the faint ghost of car exhaust. Marcus opened the truck door for Kenya like the gesture might steady her bones. I climbed into my own car and sat for a moment with my palms flat on the wheel, the heater wheezing lukewarm, the world feeling like it had been put on a low simmer. The days after that were not days so much as a long hallway of small sounds. I made coffee in the dark and forgot to drink it until it went cold. I wiped the counter 4 times in a row and didn't notice until the rag went dry. Bills arrived and waited their turn. The house creaked and settled and remembered old arguments like an attic full of boxes. Sleep came in pieces, like mercy that was deciding if I deserved it. Harold called twice. I let both ring out and listened to his voice crawl out of the machine, tired and careful. Rhonda, let's talk. Click. I'm at the motel by the bypass. Click. He didn't say the room number, he didn't have to. I deleted the first message and left the second there like a nail to hang something on later. Marcus visited in the evenings, tracking in the winter on his boots. He stood by the sink while I peeled oranges, the sweet mist catching in my eyelashes. We didn't talk about hope, we talked about logistics like the universe was an appointment we could make. He repaired the hallway frame that had been tilting since last summer, the hammer's rhythm oddly gentle. Kenya texted me a picture of soup she'd made and a thumbs up. I sent back a heart. Progress sometimes looks like 2 thumbs and a bowl. On the 8th night, I found Harold's leather jacket at the back of the hall closet under a stack of old quilt tops. The elbow patch stared back at me like a bruise that wouldn't fade. I pressed my face into the leather and waited for the scent that meant home. It was there, faint now, threaded with the dust of hours and the breath of winter. I folded the jacket small as I could and pushed it farther in. Some things you don't throw out. You put them where they can't find you in the dark. When the envelope finally came, cream paper, clinic logo in tidy blue, I was on the porch pruning the citrus bush I kept lying to about our hardiness zone. The mailwoman lifted it like it weighed more than paper. Got something important, Miss Carter, she said, and my name felt both right and suddenly new. I wiped my hands on my jeans and took it. My heart beat against it like the letter could pulse back. Inside, at the table, the lemon runner lay straight as a sermon. I texted Marcus one word, here. He arrived in 7 minutes and 14 heartbeats. Kenya came in slow, coat unzipped, cheeks bare of makeup, hair in a scarf in the color of resolve. Nobody sat until everybody did. I didn't make a speech. I slid my finger under the flap and split it clean. The paper inside made its own private sound. I unfolded with both hands, because shaking is easier to hide if you involve your whole body. The words on the page were simple and unforgiving. I didn't read them out loud at first. I read them to the part of me that had been bracing against a wall for 2 weeks. Marcus watched my face. Kenya watched my hands. The clock did its small work on the wall. Somewhere down the block a dog barked at the shape of its life. "It's yours," I said, and the room took a breath it had been holding since the day we opened the door on all this. Kenya covered her mouth. Marcus shut his eyes hard, then opened them as if light hurt and he wanted it anyway. He laughed, one surprised burst that was equal parts joy and grief, then dragged both hands over his face like he was washing in air. "Okay," he said, shaky. "Okay." Kenya reached across the table with a courage I hadn't seen in her, laid her palm on the back of his hand, then pulled it away as if she were asking permission with her fingertips. He curled his fingers around hers. That small clasp did something to the ache I was living in, didn't cure it, but took its temperature down a degree. I stood up because sitting felt like drowning. The house was too quiet for celebration, too full for sobbing. I walked to the sink, turned the faucet on low, and watched a thin line of water carve steam off a pot I'd left there. The result had been the thing I prayed for through gritted teeth. It didn't make any of the other truth lighter. "I'm sorry," Kenya said, the words ragged and clean. "For the harm, not just the fear. I will carry it. I will do right by this child and by you, Miss Rhonda, even if it takes my whole life." I nodded without turning, because if I looked at her then I might break in an unhelpful way. "He'll be loved," I said to the water. "Start with that." Marcus's chair scraped. "Mom, thank you." I shook my head. "Don't thank me for doing what I was built for." The phone on the wall rang, a sound from 10 years ago that still works. I wiped my hands and let it go once, twice, 3 times, then picked up. Harold's voice came thin through the wire, like the past calling into a well. "Rhonda." "What?" "I heard," he said, which meant he'd been waiting for our mailbox like a thief waits for dark. "How is he?" "Standing up," I said. He took a breath I knew by sound alone. "I'd like to see you." "You've seen enough," I said. "Please." The please landed like a penny in a fountain, a wish, not a plan. I stared at the lemon runner, then at the jacket drawer I'd shoved shut with my hip. 1 hour, I said, before the kinder part of me could stand up to disagree. Lobby of the motel. "Room's easier," he tried. "Lobby," I repeated, and hung up. Marcus watched me set the phone back in its cradle like I was putting down a knife. "You don't have to." "I know," I said. "But I'm going." Kenya stood too. "Do you want me to come?" I looked between them, my boy braver than his father today, the woman who had hurt us holding herself steady, her hand low on her belly like instinct. "No," I said. "Make tea. Sit. Breathe. I won't be long." The motel lobby smelled like coffee that had been made yesterday and reheated in a machine that had opinions about cleanliness. A plastic ficus guarded the soda machine like a tired soldier. The clerk pretended not to notice anything except the screen's blue light. Harold was already there, wearing a shirt I'd ironed so many times it knew how to behave on its own. He stood when he saw me and then didn't know what to do with his hands. "You look tired," he said, like a man breaking ice with a spoon. "Tell me why I'm here," I said. He licked his lips. "To forgive me." "No," I said. "To hear your last sentence in our marriage." He closed his eyes like I'd thrown light too bright in them. When he opened them, he found my face and held it like a ledge. "I am sorry," he said, and the words were the right shape. He reached, stopped, let his hand fall. "I don't know how to be without what I did and still be someone. You start, I said, by being without me. He swayed half an inch, then righted. Rhonda. I held up a palm. The child is Marcus's. You don't come by the house. You don't darken that church tomorrow. You call your son when you earn the courage to hear who you've been. And when you do, you listen. He nodded, the kind of nod that means a man has finally found the floor. Where will I? That's not my problem anymore, I said, and the sentence surprised me with how soft it sounded. We both looked down. Between us, a circle of dirt ringed the fake plant where somebody's shoe had scuffed the tile again and again. He bent, as if to fix it, and stopped because it was unfixable. We stood in that truth like two people on opposite banks of a river that used to be a path. I turned to leave. Behind me, the neon vacancy sign snapped once and went dark, a blown fuse, a coincidence, a small theatrical mercy. I didn't look back. The phone split the dark like a flare. I fumbled it to my ear, heart already sprinting. Miss Rhonda, Kenya breathed, breathy and high, it's time. Cold floor under my feet, sweater over my nightgown, keys, wallet, a lemon candy shoved in my cheek by habit. Outside, the air was a clean knife, the sky hadn't decided on morning yet. I drove empty streets that remembered the wedding we didn't have and didn't care. The hospital lights lifted out of the dark like a ship. Inside, the place smelled like floor wax and coffee that had been punished for existing. Marcus met me at the elevator, hair wild, coat half on, eyes bright and frightened like he'd been handed a miracle with a timer on it. Room 5B, he said. We walked fast, his hand finding my elbow the way little boys do when they remember they used to. Kenya lay on the bed, knees tented, a nurse at her shoulder counting low and steady like a metronome for pain. The monitor beeping looked bossy and disinterested. Kenya's hair was tied back with a scarf the color of courage. Sweat shone along her hairline. She reached for me without asking permission and I went, my fingers swallowed by her grip. Hey, baby, I said. We're here. I'm scared, she said, and the words trembled out like glass bells. Me too, I said, and that honesty made the room feel less lonely. Deep breath, the nurse coached. Good. Again. You're doing beautifully. Another contraction hit, the room narrowed to the size of a breath. Kenya bared her teeth at the ceiling, then at me, then at nobody. Marcus stood behind her and braced the bed frame like his strength could get under the pain and lift. You got this, he whispered. You got this. I'm right here. The doctor arrived with calm hands and a voice like smooth stone. We're close, she said, gloves snapping like punctuation. Next one, chin down, push through it. Time hung by its heels. I smelled antiseptic, the heat of bodies working, the iron penny edge of blood. Kenya bore down and the world turned white around the edges. That's it, the nurse sang. That's. A cry split the air, sharp, aggrieved, the sound of a person newly invented. Kenya sagged. Marcus made a sound I'd only heard once before when he was 7 and broke his arm and saw it was still attached. The doctor lifted a red, furious miracle into the light. Hello there, she murmured to the squirming, screaming bundle. Welcome, baby. The cry changed shape when they set him on Kenya's chest. He snuffled, outraged, then quieted like he'd remembered what a body knows. His hair was dark and damp, his mouth was a stern little comma. He opened his eyes and made a tiny noise like yes. Marcus touched his son with one finger like the baby was made of fog. Hey, he said, wrecked. Hey, little man. Name? The nurse asked, pen ready, the bureaucracy of love already hungry. Kenya swallowed and glanced at me, then at Marcus. Micah, she whispered. If that's okay. Marcus laughed, the kind of laugh that is half sob and half prayer. Micah's perfect. They cleaned and swaddled him, someone tucked a tiny hat onto a tiny head. Kenya's skin smelled like salt and victory. I pressed a kiss to her damp forehead, tasting the salt, the sturdiness. She caught my wrist and held it, not desperate now, just sure. "Thank you," she said into my palm. "For what?" I asked, and my voice was threadbare. "For staying," she said. I sat in a hard chair and watched the three of them, my breath evening out to their new rhythm. I thought of lemon glaze setting on a cake while the world changed its name. I thought of leather hidden in a closet and of the small pair of scissors I'd used last night to cut a square from that elbow patch, not to keep harm but to keep proof that things mend. It lay in my purse now, a soft brown postage stamp of a former life. I slid my fingers over it and felt its old stubbornness warm in my hand. By afternoon the room had become a nest of paper cups and soft blankets and the soft bragging of nurses who'd seen 1,000 births and still cheered like this was the first. Sun leaked in along the blinds like golden thread in a hem. Marcus shaved, badly, in the sink and pretended he hadn't cried. Kenya slept in bursts, waking to check the bundle of gravity on her chest, then slipping under again, trusting the air to hold her. I took a turn at the window with Micah in my arms, his weight a truth my bones loved. His breath puffed milk-sweet against my throat. He made that baby sigh that sounds like the end of a good hymn. Down in the parking lot a man argued with a ticket machine and lost. The coffee cart clinked. Somewhere a lullaby played over the intercom for another baby who'd kicked his way into sentences. I swayed without meaning to, my feet remembering a rhythm from a long time ago on a different floor with a different boy. "Grandma," Marcus said from the bed, teasing like he'd been saving the word. It hit me in the chest and bloomed out into the room like a soft explosion. I kissed Micah's hat and took a breath that smelled like new cotton and vanilla and second chances. 2 weeks later, on a Sunday that refused to be anything but bright, we carried him into the church we had once dressed for a wedding. The sanctuary smelled like wax and wood polish, old hymnals and hand lotion. The candles along the side altar burned steady. The stained glass made patches of color on the floor of ruby, sapphire, a little square of lemon that found the toe of my shoe and stayed there like it knew me. I had baked another pound cake that morning, laughing at myself for checking it too many times through the oven window. The glaze went on like mercy, thin and white. In the fellowship hall, Miss Lila from the choir set out plastic forks with the seriousness of surgery. She squeezed my shoulder and didn't mention anything that didn't need mentioning. We kept it small, no announcements, no big music, just the pastor's gentle hands and our tired eyes and a baby who made the organist forget which verse she was on. Kenya wore a simple cream dress and flats, her scarf was a calm blue. Marcus had a tie he tied too short, I fixed it, the little domestic miracle of a mother's fingers still knowing the knot. "Names?" the pastor asked, voice soaked in kindness. "Micah James," Kenya said, standing a fraction taller as she said it. "Amen," someone whispered from the second row. "Will the grandparents come forward?" the pastor said, and for a second there was a hitch in the room. I stepped up anyway, alone, and the hitch passed like a cloud across the sun. The water in the font caught the light like a good idea. The pastor dipped her fingers and touched the baby's forehead, then the stern little comma of his mouth relaxed into a sleep smile like he had opinions on sacraments. "Beloved child," she said, "we name you among us." His hair smelled like soap and warm secrets. Kenya cried into her own smile. Marcus tucked his chin and blinked fast. I felt Harold before I saw him. Not inside, he kept his promise and my boundary, but in the periphery of the stained glass, across the street, in the shadow of the magnolia. A figure not coming closer, not leaving, watching in a posture that looked like apology practiced in private. He had on that denim jacket he'd grabbed instead of the leather. His hands were in his pockets like he was keeping them from doing harm. I didn't lift a hand. I didn't wave. I just noted the shape of him and turned back to the child who had flooded our broken house and found it still afloat. After, in the fellowship hall, people did what people do when they don't know what else to do, they ate. Someone balanced a plate on a hymn book and said this was the best cake I'd ever made. Miss Lila wrapped an extra slice for later with the generosity of someone who's always half planning for a bad day. Kenya sat and let people love her, hand on shoulder, kiss to cheek, "You're strong," murmured like a password. Marcus worked the room with more patience than his father ever did, receiving and deflecting, holding Micah with a gentleness that made me proud enough to be quiet. I slipped into a pew when no one was watching, the sanctuary humming itself back to still. A draft moved the flame on the last candle and it recovered, stubborn, the way small lights do when you want them to. I took the square of leather from my purse and tucked it under the cushion of the pew where I always sat. Not a shrine, not a secret, just a marker where an old life ended and a new one started breathing. Footsteps sounded at the back. I didn't turn. The door wheezed, the brass latch hummed. The steps stopped. A paper whisper skated along the pew behind me, the soft thud of something set down, a letter, maybe, or a photograph. The air pushed a little at the back of my neck as the door opened again and closed. I let the quiet count to 10. Then I reached back without looking and laid my hand on the left behind thing. It was thick, it was light, it was full of ink that could hurt or heal depending on whether I opened it. I slid it into my purse, stood, and blew out the last candle. Smoke rose in a thin gray ribbon, curling like the tail of a question that didn't need an answer yet.